Well, if we can't make our buyers move any faster through the funnel, can we at least lose fewer of them? We can, and I'll show you how. Funnel Vision is brought to you by Math Marketing, creators of the funnel plan. Math Marketing is the source of the 1, 2, 3 of B2B. I've argued in recent blogs that you can't make your funnel flow faster just because you've got quotas to meet, but that you can improve your conversion rates. We had a ton of emails over the last couple of weeks asking for specific tactical suggestions as to how you improve your conversion rates, and that's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to get quite specific in the tactics that we'll recommend, tactics that will improve your conversion rates at each stage in the funnel. I've got a lot of specific tactics I'm going to recommend. I'll tie them all together into a slightly coherent theme at the end. Let me just ramble for the moment, or riff if I was being a little bit more cool. I'll say ramble actually. Let me ramble for a while about a couple of key ideas that we've seen customers use successfully to improve conversion rates. Well, let's start with AdWords. We've not been fans or big fans of AdWords in the past because so much money gets spent on irrelevant ads or ads that generate really just information seekers. Of late, we've had quite some success with very, very targeted AdWords. So a couple of quick tips on that. Forget about volume. In most B2B companies, what we really want is the small number of buyers who are in the right frame of mind. In fact, the right buyers in the right frame of mind. So what I would say about AdWords is if anybody's typing in the exact expression that you'd want to be talking to them about, then you probably want to be advertising for that. Forget about general purpose phrases that have got super high volume, because they're always going to have low conversion because you just can't predict what they're looking for. Quick example from our own business. If anybody's typing in B2B marketing training, they're probably after exactly what we do. Or if they're typing in sales and marketing plan. Again, that's somebody we want to be talking to. Whereas B2B marketing, much broader term, much higher volume, too broad, actually. So first recommendation would be consider very low volume, very targeted AdWords that will attract buyers, the right buyers who are in the right frame of mind. Gear yourself for very low volume, but high yield. Next tip is just about how quickly you respond to leads wherever they come from. There was a study published in the Harvard Business Review. I'll include a link to it in the show notes. The article argued, in fact, it drew from, I think, over 1,000 companies that it surveyed about their response rates and their response timeliness. And the link between how quickly you respond and the sort of rates that you get are just scary. Long story short, if you respond in the first hour compared to any time over the next 2 days, you get and this is going to sound kind of weird, but you get a 60-fold improvement in your conversion rates. How do they measure conversion rates in this particular study? Basically, how many of those people did you have a meaningful conversation about your product or service with? 60-fold improvement if you call them in the first hour rather than over the next 2 days. The maths is really simple. Call them faster. Next tip is courtesy of Miller Hyman, the sales training company. Now, they use a term that we've adopted, the valid business reason. In essence, what it means is, if I want to have a meeting with you, I need to work out ahead of time what you are going to get out of the meeting, not what I'm going to get out of the meeting. And if I can't convince myself that you're going to get a lot out of that meeting, what right do I have to ask you for a meeting at all? So valid business reason in English means do your homework, work out what benefit your prospect is going to get from the meeting with you, not the benefit that you're going to get. Get really, really good at researching and then arguing your case for that meeting. That's my next tip. Next one is around what we call new movers. Long story short, when you're selling in B2B, as you know, you're often selling to multiple roles within the business. Normally, one or two or three of those roles are really high influence. They're really critical roles. Not the person who's going to sign the contract or sign the check, but the person who actually has the problem that you solve. When you know who that is, then finding out that a new person who fills that role has moved into one of your target companies, now's the time to be talking to them. So using LinkedIn alerts to track what we call new movers is a great tactic because it means you're in front of the right person at the right time because they've normally been brought in to effect change. Using LinkedIn alerts allows you to understand who's moved into your target accounts in the right role. Quick shout out to my friends at Postwire. In fact, we've been working with these guys for a couple of years. The product is called Postwire and the company is called Visible Gains. But let's stick with Postwire. What they've built is a really powerful tool for salespeople to be super responsive. Here's the short version of it. If I'm a sales guy and I want to have a dialogue with you, some of which is going to be online, then why not give me all the tools I need to have that dialogue effectively? That's essentially the problem that they're trying to solve. What have they done? Well, again, as a sales guy, I can create a page just for you. It's your company name, it's your personal name, or it's the topic or conversation name. I can create that page in just a few clicks. Then I can populate that page with any of the assets that marketing have set aside for me on Postwire, plus a few that I've identified of my own. So point one, customized landing page. Point two, a collection of assets carefully curated by marketing, but added to by me. And the important point is I'm only going to show you as the prospect what I think you need to see right now. And as a sales guy, I probably know that better than marketing knows it. Third thing they've done is to allow me to be really responsive. That is, when you view one of those assets on this page that I created for you, I get a little alert to tell me that you viewed it. Well, I know now two things. Firstly, that you're interested. The second thing I know is that you're in your office. That gives me a chance to contact you and to have the discussion with you. Great tool, check it out, Postwire. Next tip is from a book called Selling to Vito, V-I-T-O, very important top officer. Horrible name, but the concept's good. One of the tips that they point out or that they recommend in the book is that often you don't really know in advance who the person, who will respond from a business. Again, we sell to multiple roles in B2B. We don't really know which one of them is going to respond or take carriage of an issue. So write to all of them at the same time. So specifically what they recommend, find the names of the people who fill each of the potential roles who might be involved in a project or a decision that you want to create or be a part of. Step two, send each of them a letter. Step three, send it to the mailroom and ask them to distribute to all six of those folk. If 6 is an arbitrary number, but however many there are. And on the letter, highlight each of the roles that you've communicated to or the people that you've communicated to, inviting one of them to respond. It's a small, somewhat naff tactic, but basically, if you don't know who's going to respond, then the idea of communicating with all of them does make sense, and the idea of letting each of them know you've communicated to the others does make sense. How you execute it is up to your discretion, but the idea of communicating with all of the potential roles at the same time and letting them know does make sense. Thanks. Selling to Vito. My next tip is around de-risking the offer. You know the power of your solution. You're asking your buyer to have that same level of confidence that you have. It's a big ask. How about instead, if you think that there is very little risk in the decision that you're asking them to make, then why don't you take the risk? That is, instead of selling them a product, sell them a monthly plan, as an example. Another example would be to be really clear in your proposal how you'll handle any dispute. Putting an arbitration clause in your contract that's really common sense says you and I understand what we're trying to achieve, but if for any reason it all falls apart, here's the way we'll handle it. You'll appoint a lawyer, I'll appoint a lawyer. Between them, they'll agree a third lawyer who's going to handle the dispute, and whatever that third lawyer agrees is the done deal. Now, I know you don't want to talk about the potential for dispute in your contract at the time of proposal, but you've got to believe your buyers are thinking about that. If you're asking them to make a decision, one of the questions they're going to ask themselves is, what happens if it all falls apart? Make that really clear and low stress, and you'll remove one of the risks. So there were 2 points in there. One was you take more of the risk by putting your offer on a monthly plan, not a fixed purchase. Don't care whether it's services or product, same recommendation. And the second part of that was to explain really clearly and without too much stress how we'll handle any disputes. Shortly I'll show you how to do this in Funnel Plan, but before that I'm going to do two things. I'm going to share with you my conclusions, and I'm going to invite you to receive other blogs like this. Let's get to the conclusion first. Forget about making your funnel flow faster, just lose fewer buyers at each stage in the funnel by starting better, by being more responsive, and by making your offer more compelling. Let's break that down a bit. Starting more relevantly, having more relevant starts, I've got 4 specific recommendations. Only advertise for keywords that identify buyers in the right frame of mind. Number 2, master the valid business reason. Why should they meet with you? Why will they benefit from the meeting, not why will you benefit from the meeting? Number 3, contact new movers. The new broom has normally been hired to sweep and make change. Great time to contact them. Number 4, consider the compelling event. By sending your communication to all of the potential stakeholders, you're making clear that this is a worthy business topic to be discussed right now, and one of them needs to respond. How about making more timely responses? Well, respond to all leads faster, regardless of where they come from. And you might want to consider appointing inside sales so that they can be more responsive on behalf of the salesperson. And the other suggestion would be help your sales guys respond to those handcrafted outreaches faster by using Postwire. And finally, making more acceptable offers. One I didn't mention in the content, but replay the whole journey in your proposals. You need to acknowledge that sometimes your proposal will be seen by people who weren't part of the early dialogue. So in your proposal, replay the whole journey. Here's the situation, here's your objectives that you shared with us, this is what we agreed is going to get in the way of you meeting those objectives, therefore this is what you need, therefore here is my proposal, and here's the plan to implement. Put the whole journey in your proposals. And de-risk the offer. Ask less of the buyer and give them an out. Well, if you enjoyed this blog, then likely you'll enjoy others. If you haven't already, can I invite you to subscribe to receive this blog? Go to mathmarketing.com/blog and either subscribe to the twice a week blog, or if you prefer, the once a month, which has a recap of all the key blogs from the month. Frankly, what most people do is subscribe to both, and you're welcome to do that. Now, if you prefer, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel here and can consume these blogs in that way. Now, if you have already, but you've got a colleague who hasn't, then now would be a great time to invite them, and I'd be so grateful if you do that. Why don't you do that now? Either subscribe or flick it along to a friend. Come back and I'll show you how we do that in Funnel Plan. In the overall funnel plan, we're going to look both at the velocity and the tactics. The recommendations that we made today were about specific tactics, but I want to start with why we made those specific tactical recommendations. Let's take a look and zoom in on the funnel plan into the velocity section, the funnel velocity. Now you can see here that we end up after 3 years with 1,410 decisions made, that is sales. Now that's a good thing when you consider that we're going to make that from only 2,176 prospective companies. we're clearly enjoying well in excess of 50% of the addressable market there. And that's in itself, that's a fantastic thing, because what that means is that we are dominating the chosen target market. Now that's the good news. The bad news is the current tactics that we have in play are frankly not good enough for that task. So what we really need to do is to make the tactics good enough to deliver that kind of outcome. And that's what we're going to do now. Let's move away from the PDF that we're looking at now and take a look at the actual funnel plan. I'll start by showing you in the funnel plan the funnel math, and I'm going to give you just the high level and then a bit of detail. In this example, we've got a business where the total buying cycle takes 13 weeks, that we turn 40% roughly of our leads into proposals, and we win roughly 50% of those proposals that we put, we actually win. So we've got a 1 from 2 closure rate, and about 40%, 4 from 10 if you like, or 2 from 5, of our leads become proposals that we go on and win half of. And it takes 3.5 meetings. Now, your business is going to have more or less, and that's not the point. The point is, in this particular business, if that's the funnel math, then the tactics need to deliver that same outcome. Now, let me just very briefly get a little bit more granular on you. Turns out those 13 weeks are made up of different periods of time that it takes to move through each stage in the journey, and that 40% roughly of leads that became proposals is actually comprised a bit of leakage at multiple stages. Likewise, the 50% proposed to close ratio, in fact it was 49, call it 50 for the moment, proposed to close ratio was affected because we lose at multiple points later in the funnel. Long story short, by the time there's an offer on the table, we've got a 49% chance of winning. By the time the prospect has agreed that they've got a problem that they should solve, we've got a 25% chance of turning that into revenue, and so on. All of that is driven by this, either this advanced funnel maths, quite granular, or this high-level funnel maths, if you prefer to work in big picture stuff. Now the real point is we need to change some tactics. So let's move into the tactics. And before I do that, actually, let me quickly zoom in and show you again the tactics that are in play in the current funnel plan. There's a number of tactics there that frankly are chewing up a lot of energy and affecting our conversion rate badly. So what I'm going to do is to delete each of these that don't make any sense in this higher yield new reality. Now, some of these positioning tactics are low rent, and some of the new tactics that we spoke of haven't been added yet. So let's go into the funnel plan software and let's get rid of those low yield tactics. Okay. You'll see the tactics here are sorted by the stage in the buyer's journey. Trade shows, frankly, high activity for most businesses, pretty low rent, and we're not going to advertise in trade magazines either. So we're going to get rid of those tactics. Now if I go back to the funnel plan, there's a number of tactics that were spoken of that do make good sense that we need to add in. So let's add in those additional tactics in the funnel plan. So firstly, we're going to add in some low volume but very high yield AdWords, Google AdWords, for buyers that are in the right frame of mind. Let's call that low volume, highly targeted Google ads. Now the valid business reason is already in here. So in this case in the plan we already had video VBR. All that really means is that I'm going to mount my case as to why you need to meet with me, and I'm going to do it on video rather than in a letter. What medium you use is up to you. I'll leave it in this plan though because we've got the VBR tactic there already. Again, now let's add in that one of our positioning tactics will be to reach out to new movers identified with LinkedIn. Now, the compelling event, that's selling to veto. The way that would play out in this particular plan is we're going to send this video VBR to multiple participants in the company. So the tactic actually hasn't changed, but we do need to acknowledge that it's going to multiple potential role holders. So video VBR will change that to video VBR to each of the potential role holders in targeted companies. Now, the next suggestion was that we're going to respond to all leads faster. Now, inbound inquiries at trade shows, well, we don't have trade shows anymore, so let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that tactic altogether. Now, inbound phone and web inquiries, we're going to say that we actually need to respond to that, so we'll say inbound phone and web inquiries responded to by inside sales. Now, we've also got helping the sales guys, so we need to give the sales folk a tool for outreaching to highly targeted prospects. So let's go back to positioning and let's say targeted outreach campaigns hosted on Postwire. And let's actually move that up next to the video VBR tactic, because that's where we're actually going to put the VBR, the video that we're hosting there. We're going to put that on a Postwire page so that we know when they respond. Finally, we want to de-risk the offer. So in the offer understood, we've already got one of the recommendations there. Present the proposal in person, of course, but ensure we spell out the whole buyer's journey. That's what I spoke about in this particular blog. But let's also add that we're going to include in the recommendation, the proposal, the soft arbitration clause. Let's add that as a tactic. Spell out how disputes will be handled. New tactic. Now, none of that was particularly weird. The tactics that are recommended were not in themselves particularly weird. What's important is that if we're looking to get higher yield from our tactics as we move through the funnel, we need to make sure that the tactics are up to that task. In next week's blog, I'll show you how to get sales and marketing to sign up for the right objectives. But for now, may your funnel be full and always flowing.